So the idea is if we use the CLA intentionally, in practice, how can we create activities where we're using these constraints and we're changing them? And what that's going to lead to is new skills always emerging within that context.
Right. So it's organizing these different small-sided games to work on perception, action. So perceptive.
That's it. Perception, action, coupling will happen within those small-sided games. That's exactly it.
Right.
Like, just a really practical example for your, for your listeners. Take a one-on-one, right? Now, if we just play a playground one-on-one where they check the ball, okay, it's all right, but it's probably not going to have much value, right? Because the players will be able to probably just fall on similar movement solutions that they've always used. So what we could do is just use constraints to destabilize those and get them exploring different ways to do it. So we could just say, you're going to play your one-on-one from a different location every time. So it's not just going to be at the top. Sometimes you might play in the corner, sometimes on the block. And we might change the start. So instead of the defender right in front, maybe we put them on the side. So there's an advantage. Maybe we say you only have 2 dribbles. Maybe we say you can only score inside the restricted area. I call it the smile. That's really going to change the offensive behaviors of the offensive player. Maybe we have a shot clock, 3 seconds. So the idea is we use constraints within these small-sided games to impact the learning. Because the problem is if we just play the small-sided game, it's just too general. It's too vague. But if we use constraints well, that's the game changer. Now we're using a CLA very specifically. And I've got, loads of constraints. And the idea is that we want to identify constraints based on what we see. So if we see players have problem areas, as coaches, we want to think, okay, how could we solve this with a new constraint? And that could just be, the constraint could be changing the location of a defender. So the player might struggle with their left hand. So we put the defender always on the right side of the offensive player, right? So that's how we could use constraints.
That was actually going to be my next question is, the art of coaching, right? We're designing these games and we don't want to give feedback necessarily on every single rep. How do you utilize your kind of experience and wisdom? Because I feel like there is probably certainly a place for, hey, how about you try this? Consider trying this, right? Giving them an opportunity to go 3 to 5 reps, and maybe there's a number of reps we should be allowing, and then being like, hey, maybe try a floater. Hey, maybe try and jump stop and a bump or something a little bit more specific. So and I know that's the art of coaching, right? That's not necessarily a science because it's going to be different for every other athlete. So
just a really great point. I think this is what I'm getting at is good coaching is a mix between art and science. Okay. The problem with the traditional approach is it's just been art, and there hasn't been any evidence or science underpinning why coaches think a certain way. But, you can't just have science, because at the end of the day, it's how you apply it. That's the art of this. So for me, it's like you said, feedback is a constraint. It's an informational constraint. So like you said, if you say try this or explore this, that's a great way to get players moving differently. And you could say something like, have you thought about doing this? Or I noticed that you've used that spin finish a lot. Can you show us a different way to finish?